This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nizzahon, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. At least that's normally what I do in this series. However, in addition to this channel's focus on Magic's history, I also do a fair bit of content on the limited format, including a full set review for every new set. And over the last week or so, I've reviewed every single card in Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and I did a video on the format's archetypes. As usual during Limited Review Week, it takes over one of the week's MTG Top 10s, and that's what we have here, where I'm giving my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in Innistrad Midnight Hunt Limited. In Magic, a bomb is a good thing. It refers to a card that has such a massive impact on the board that when it comes down, it completely alters the game in your favor. In other words, these are cards you hope to see the most in Draft and Sealed. Within my review, a card is a bomb if it receives an A- or higher, and this time around, 18 cards received a grade that high, and in this video, I'm going to give my picks for the 10 biggest bombs from among those 18. Alright, let's get started. At number 10, I have Moonveil Regent. This is a dragon with amazing base stats as a 4-mana 4/4 flyer, and then it just has all kinds of upside. First of all, when it dies, it does damage to stuff, and it'll generally be doing at least 2, because most decks are 2 colors. Sometimes it'll do 3. There is a little bit of a downside where if it's like your only permanent, it'll do 0, but that's highly unlikely in a game of Limited. It'll usually do somewhere between 1 and 2, and occasionally do 3. So that means you're going to get a 2-for-1 even if your opponent kills it right away. And in addition to that fact, it also gives you the ability to cash in cards in your hand for cards from your deck, depending on the colors of a spell you cast. And again, most spells are at least one color, so you're sort of rummaging. So yeah, this is a huge flying creature with great stats that gives you the upside of ripping through your library, and its sort of basement level is that your opponent kills it, and then it does 2 damage to one of their things or to them, and that's definitely a bomb. So at number 9, I have Brutal Cathar, a werewolf. On the human side of the card, you get a creature that comes into play and exiles a creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. That's a card you always play in Limited. That kind of card is usually, certainly not a bomb, but it's usually like a B+, because you're adding to the board while subtracting from your opponents. And then you add the whole additional upside this thing has, which first of all is that it can transform into Moonrage Brute when it becomes nighttime, which is actually a really relevant creature thanks to First Strike. And if your opponent does find a way to kill it, they at least have to pay 3 life to do it, so they're getting punished. And then the really crazy thing about this card is if you keep it in play long enough for it to transform back and forth, every time it turns into the Cathar, the human side again, you get to exile another creature. Now, this can be a little swingy. If there was like no downside to exiling them, it would be much, much higher on this list. It is a little swingy in the sense that, if your opponent finds a way to kill the Cathar, they're going to get their stuff back, but it's well worth the downside when it has this insane of upside. At number 8, I have Primal Adversary. It's the only adversary that made this list, though I did give other adversaries bomb grades. This is the only one that actually makes this top 10. And the reason it makes it for me is because it's so easy to imagine amazing situations with it. It's sort of the most efficient. They're all crazy efficient, but the adversary is 3 mana for a 4/3 with trample. That's great. That's not a bomb, but that's a card you literally play in every Limited format ever. And then it has insane upside. If you pay additional mana when it comes into play, it gets a +1/+1 counter and turns lands into 3/3 wolf creatures. So think of it this way. If you pay 5 mana for this, 2 and a green, and then pay this pseudo kicker cost once, you get a 5/4 with trample and a 3/3 with haste. And that's for 5 mana. Now, the land may be tapped because you use it to pay for the adversary, but that's still incredible. And that's sort of like just kicking it once. As the game gets longer and as you have more mana, you can pump even more mana into it, and it's still really incredible and becomes increasingly impactful and increasingly bomb-like. But what's nice about it is that it's a bomb that has a floor that you can just play it early if you need to. A lot of bombs, you need 5 or 6 mana. You need to get there to actually play your bomb. And in this case, in an emergency, you can drop this earlier if you need to, and it's a pretty big presence on the board. At number 7, I have Sigarda, Champion of Light. Like our dragon, she's a 4-mana 4/4 with flying and all kinds of upside. For one thing, she has trample. For another thing, she's a human lord, so she'll pump all your humans, and if you're in green-white, A lot of your creatures are just going to be humans without you even trying. And then she has an incredibly powerful Coven ability that will let you draw more humans from your deck. Again, if there were only a few humans in this set, she wouldn't be so good, but lots and lots of creatures in green-white, including all of them that have Coven, and that's really green-white's archetype. They're all humans. So your deck's just going to be filled with them. You're going to have an easy time finding a human in the top 5. You're going to have like 10 humans in your deck. So she's going to be insane. The format really dictates how powerful she is, in addition to the fact that she already just has a really reasonable baseline as a 4-mana, 4/4 with flying. At number 6, I have Tovolar, Dire Overlord. He's kind of the villain in the lore for this set, the guy who's sort of making a bad name for werewolves and disrupting this festival that they're all having, and he's a really good card. Like Sigarda, you're going to be playing red-green, and you're just going to look at your cards and you're going to be like, hey, I have 10 werewolves, and that's just kind of how it's going to work out. You're going to have a lot of wolves and werewolves. He counts both, and he's a great payoff for having them. On both sides of the card, he has the ability to draw you a card every time a wolf or werewolf hits your opponent, and it counts each individual wolf or werewolf, including Tovolar himself, so you can draw multiple cards in a turn, and even if he's all alone and he's able to attack and your opponent can't block, you draw a card. He can make it night if you have enough wolves and werewolves on the table, and once he transforms, he gets bigger and gains a Kessig Wolf Run ability that allows you to pump wolves or werewolves by +X/+0 and give them trample. So again, like Sigarda, you're just going to have werewolves in your deck. It's not really a build around in the sense that you have to go really hard after them. It's just going to happen. Obviously, you should value them a little more when you have something like Tovolar or Sigarda, a bomb that's really focused on a tribe, but you don't have to try that hard. At number 5, I have Arlen the Pack's Hope, a double-faced planeswalker who has Daybound and Nightbound. Both sides of this are really powerful, and I actually think the best ability on the whole card is on her human side. There aren't very many Daybound, Nightbound cards where you'd say the best ability is on the front, but I think that's true here because being able to come down and make 2 wolf creature tokens right away is going to do a great job of protecting her, and then you can use her +1 on the next turn, which synergizes really well with her, actually, because you can use her +1, which lets you cast a creature as though it had flash, in addition to getting a +1/+1 counter when it comes down. And that means you can use her +1, pass your turn, go to your opponent's turn, and Arlen will have transformed into Arlen the Moon's Fury, and you can still play a creature, because you can play it on your opponent's turn. Thus, you're not giving up the ability to play a creature, you're just changing when you're going to do it, and you're going to get a bonus. And then the Arlen the Moon's Fury side can help you transform her back if you want to, because it has the ability to give you extra mana, and that extra mana can be used to double spell and turn it back into Arlen the Pack's Hope if you're ready to use that -3 again. And it can also, sometimes she'll just come down, it'll be nighttime, and you just want to rumble with her as a 5/5 werewolf with trample, indestructible, and haste, and that's going to be great too. All the modes here are really awesome, and I really like that they designed it so her 2 sides synergize together and help you change between day and night internally. At number 4, I have Wrenn and 7, another Planeswalker, and a Planeswalker with 4 abilities, which is always pretty sweet. And in this case, Wrenn and 7 can do stuff with lands, like the +1 draws you lands into your hand and loads everything else into your graveyard. It has a 0 ability that lets you put all your lands from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. And the ability that's probably the most powerful here, apart from the ultimate, of course, is probably her -3, which generates a green Treefolk creature token with reach that has power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. So it all synergizes well together. You'll be putting lands into your hand and onto the battlefield, and you can make this huge Treefolk, which will most likely be at least a 5/5 on turn 5 with reach. And that means Wrenn's going to be reasonably protected, and you can use the +1 a couple more times and then make another Treefolk that will be even bigger. It's just not that hard to do thanks to the protection that Wrenn brings with her. The ultimate, again, awesome. You get all your stuff back from your graveyard and you just get to have them all in your hand. If you get to untap after doing that, or you're already untapped when you do it, you're just going to win because you have so much card advantage. But generally, I think you probably won't necessarily have the time to do that, but that's okay because generating a couple of huge Treefolk tokens and loading your graveyard and drawing some cards is going to be plenty for this to be a bomb. At number 3, I have Liesa, Forgotten Archangel. So she's another one of these flyers that just is amazing if you take everything else away from it, in that a 5-mana 4/5 flyer is already a really good card. But then you tack on Lifelink, which makes it very hard for your opponent to win a race. And then you tack on the fact that when another non-token creature you control dies, you return it to your hand at the beginning of the end step. And then, on top of that, she also hates on your opponent's graveyard. Any creature they have that dies just gets exiled, so you don't have to worry about disturb or anything like that. So she does a whole lot. One of the nice things about her is most of the time when you play her, she'll immediately have an impact because suddenly you look at your board and be like, so I'm going to get these creatures back, right? Like if they trade, I'm going to get these back. So you'll just be like, all right, I'm attacking you. And your opponent can either block and lose their things or let the damage through. And I think either outcome is good for you. It's probably even better if they block, frankly. You don't get the creatures back until the end step, but that's okay. You're getting them back and your opponent's not. They're just gone, especially because even if they have Disturb, they're not coming back because Liesa's in play. And then the next turn you untap and she can just take over in the air. She's incredible. At number 2, I've got Tovolar's Huntmaster. So up front, this is a 6-mana 6/6 that makes 2/2/2 green wolf creature tokens. That's a great card. That would probably already be a bomb, though not as high up on this list as it is. And the reason for that is it has efficient stats and it adds to the board no matter what. So if your opponent kills it right away, you're like, okay, well, at least I still have 2/2 green wolf creature tokens. But then, if Tovolar hangs around for a while and transforms into Tovolar's pack leader, it also gains the ability to make 2 wolf tokens every time it attacks, and the ability to make your wolf or werewolf creatures you control fight your opponent's stuff. So he becomes a removal spell that generates even more wolf tokens, and he just gets insane. Now, depending on how easy or difficult it is to transform Tovolar and werewolves in general in this format, maybe he won't end up this high. But I have a feeling that by the time you play Tovolar in the later part of the game, or his Huntmaster actually, in the later part of the game, him transforming is pretty likely, and it may already just be nighttime, because in the later part of the game, it's sort of more likely to happen because players just naturally are going to be like, well, I end my turn and I can't do anything, because that's just what happens in the late part of most limited games. So it transforming late seems pretty likely to me, and again, even if it doesn't, the baseline is an incredible card. Before I give you my pick for the number 1 bomb in the format, I do want to give honorable mentions to all the cards that I do think are bombs, but didn't quite make the list for me. And you can see them on your screen now. And at number 1, I've got Sunstreak Phoenix. So this one's a little contentious. I learned from my set review where I gave this an A+, and a lot of people didn't think it was that good. So, this could be a card I end up being wrong about. I am wrong about cards before I play with them, of course, sometimes. And this could be one, but I kind of don't think so. It's a 4-mana 4/2 with flying. So again, we've got another great flyer here that has good stats that you would play in literally every limited deck. And then, what really makes it a bomb for me is the fact that it's just not going to stay dead. And with stats like a 4-mana 4/2 flyer that you can just keep turning sideways and keep attacking them and keep attacking them, and yeah, maybe they can block it with something and kill it, but their thing's probably dying too because it has 4 power. You can just keep pressuring them. And yeah, you're not going to have sort of complete control. Night and Day's not going to change every single turn, so you're not always going to be able to bring it back, but it's going to be changing enough, and the cost is low enough to bring it back that it just doesn't seem like a huge hurdle. This Phoenix is going to, it's going to die once, and then it's going to come back at least twice in most games, and that's going to be plenty for you to win the game. One thing to keep in mind is if it's nighttime, for example, and it's your turn, and what you really want to do is get your Phoenix back, you can just pass your turn, and then you can pay the mana and get your Phoenix back. And if you have instants to use on your opponent's turn, it's even better, but sometimes just getting this Phoenix back will be well worth the turn. Turning it into Day can be a little trickier, but if you're holding on to cards to not play things to bring back your Phoenix, there's some synergy there because you probably have 2 spells you can play in a single turn. It's not always going to be right to do that, not always going to be right not to add to the board, but there will be times where it is, because this is a very real threat for your opponent. Now, there are ways to exile creatures in this format. They're around, and they needed to be because there's so many graveyard things going on, and maybe that decreases the Phoenix's value a little bit. But right now, I think it's going to be the biggest bomb in this format. This kind of creature that just can't be dealt with by normal means that does a bunch of damage is pretty good. Well, those are my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Do you think I left any cards off the list that should have made it? Let me know in the comments. If you want to buy any of these awesome cards, check out the description where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each of them. If you want to make sure you catch future content, including more limited videos, as well as MTG Top 10s, subscribe and turn on notifications. Additionally, if you're looking for the rest of this set review or more MTG Top 10s, you'll see both of those playlists on your screen shortly. Lastly, if you enjoy my content, consider supporting me via Patreon. Thanks for watching.